Hey Olive, Arlo, and Frank. It's Grandpa coming to you from the living room in Jacksonville Beach, and today we're going to do The King's Stilts by Dr. Seuss. And here's a picture of Stilts and the King's crown. This book came out in 1967, so my brother Richard was 7 years old when this came out. I was already 14. Nobody was reading books like this to me. I think the first one we looked at was from 1938. And this is maybe the fourth one. I have a list here. I know the third one. Naturally, the king never wore his stilts during business hours. When King Bertram worked, he really worked, and his stilts stood forgotten in the tall stilt closet in the castle's front hallway. And here we see the closet with the stilts in there. Red stilts. There was so much work to be done in the kingdom of Ben that King Bertram had to get up every morning at 5. Long before the townsfolk and the farmers were awake, the king was splashing away in his bath. It was right there, in fact, that his day's work began. With his left hand, he could bathe with his royal bath brush, but his right hand he always had to keep dry for signing the important papers of state. So Dr. Seuss has cast a jaundiced eye at bureaucrats. So, and here he is, and we'll find out who these other people are that are with him. But he's in the tub. He doesn't even have any time. He starts working at 5 in the morning. And it's like, well, I got to get a bath, but I got to sign papers because these are really important papers. Eric, his page boy, brought in these papers on a big silver tray, and we saw Eric, the little boy there. He stood at attention at the foot of the tub while old Lord Droon took the papers one by one and held them over the water for His Majesty to sign. Sign here, sign there, old Droon would say, and hurry, sire, hurry. There are hundreds more to come. It was just the same at breakfast. The king cut and buttered his toast with only his left hand. With his right, he kept signing royal orders and commands. By 7 every morning, the king had always finished more business than most kings do in a month. He had to get this all done before 7, for that was the hour when his big work commenced. The most difficult and important work in the whole kingdom of Ben. I wonder what this work is. This was the work of caring for the mighty dike trees that protected the people of Ben from the sea. And a dike is something, the famous ones are in Holland, but Olive, in the city that you live in right now, they have these walls, retaining walls, that are the same thing as dikes. There's several things that they're called, but they are these big walls that keep the sea or the river or whatever from coming into low-lying areas. And New Orleans is a low-lying area. The sea pushed against the kingdom on 3 sides. I think I better put my glasses on. The kingdom was a low one, the sea was a high one, and only the dike trees kept the sea from pouring in. They grew so close together in a row along the shore that they held back the water with their heavy, knotted roots. But to keep these trees strong and sturdy was not an easy task. They were more spicy than pine trees, and their roots were very tasty to a certain sort of bird. This was a kind of giant blackbird with a sharp and pointed beak. Nizzards, they were called by the people of Ben. These nizzards were always flying about over the dike trees, waiting for a chance to swoop down and peck. If nobody stopped them, the roots would soon give way. Then the sea would pour in with a terrible roar, and every last soul in the kingdom would drown. And here's a picture of the kingdom. There's the trees surrounding the whole island. See the sea out there, and the birds are flying around up there. And they're going like, ooh, look, that looks really tasty. Let's go get us some roots, some dike tree roots. But King Bertram did not permit this to happen. He had gathered together in his kingdom the largest and the smartest cats in all the world, and had trained them to chase the nizzards away. These cats were called patrol cats and wore badges that said PC. Everything in Ben, said King Bertram, depends on our patrol cats. They are more important than our army, our navy, and our fire department too, because they keep the nizzards away from the dike trees, and the dike trees keep the ocean back out of our land. 1,000 cats in all. They divided up the work. 500 guarded the kingdom by day. The other 500 kept watch through the night. And here they are. They actually look like they're having fun chasing these birds, and the birds look like they're having fun. At 7 every morning came the changing of the cat guard. At the sound of a trumpet, the king left his breakfast and mounted his horse for the daily review. Fresh, brisk, and well-fed, the 500 day cats marched past him toward the dike trees to take up their watch. At the same time, the night cats, muddy, tired, and hungry, headed home to their kennels for their 12 hours rest. There was rest for the cats. There was none for the king. It took every minute of his morning to see that they were given the very best of care. The huts that they slept in must be kept clean and tidy. Each cat must be brushed and his whiskers trimmed just so. The cat kitchen was even bigger and grander than the king's, and the cooks who did the cooking were the chief cooks in the land. So he's really taking good care of these cats. And there they are, marching past the king in review. So I marched and did military reviews. And let's see, who else? Arlo, your dad was in the Marines. I was in the Air Force, he was in the Marines. And we did parades. Your Majesty, the chief in charge of fish would always say, tell us what you think the food we feed. Tell us that you think the food we feed our cats is perfect. And the king would look over the huge wet baskets of fish, choosing only the finest and the freshest to serve to the patrol cats. And so here's the king with the fish guy. And he's choosing the fish. He's not letting somebody else do it. So went the morning. Then all afternoon, both in winter and summer, the king made his rounds by the edge of the sea. Every root of every dike tree he inspected every day. So instead of like having other people do this stuff, now he has cooks that are cooking for the cats, but he's picking out the fish. He's the chief inspector who's going around making sure that the dike trees have not been compromised, their roots have not been compromised. But finally at 5 o'clock, the great task was finished. Then the king smiled. A hard day, he'd say, full of nizzardly worries. A long day, he'd say. Now it's time for some fun. This was the moment King Bertram lived for. When he worked, he really worked. But when he played, he really played. And before we go on with the text, here he is inspecting the tree, and you see there's a problem. The lizard took the part of the root, he ate it, so that tree's compromised. I don't know how they fix it. And Eric's the little boy that's with him. He's his chief cook and bottle washer. His assistant, or whatever you call him. The page of the court. Quick, Eric, he'd shout. Quick, Eric, the stilts. Down the slope from the dike trees, away from all troubles, the king and Eric would race like two boys straight to the tall stilt closet in the castle's front hallway. Out came the stilts. Up leapt the king. High in the air, his royal robes streaming. He'd race through the marble halls, out across the terrace, up and down the garden stairs. Black spotted coach dogs barked and romped beside him, nipping at the heels of his flashing red stilts. And here he is. He's heading on out on the stilts, going down the steps. There's the dog after him. All the people in the castle grounds are looking like, there he goes. There goes that crazy king. The townsfolk looked on from the walls and just loved it. A grown-up king on stilts, they'd say, does look rather strange. But it's hard work being king, and he does his work well. If he wants to have a bit of fun, sure, let him have it. But there was one man in Ben who didn't like fun. There's always one man that doesn't like when you're having fun. Even when you're the king. He didn't like games. He didn't like laughing. This man was a scowler. His name was Lord Droon. So, and when you scowl, you go like, that's scowling at somebody. Isn't Lord Droon the dude from the beginning of the book? Yeah. Lord Droon's the guy who gives him the papers to sign when he's in the bathtub and at his breakfast table. This man was a scowler. This man was Lord Droon. Laughing spoils the shape of the face, he declared. The lines at the corners of the mouth should go down. Every afternoon, When the stilt hour drew near, Lord Droon would slink away to his room in the northwest tower and sulk. When you sulk, you feel bad for yourself. You're like, nobody understands. I hate everybody. I'm over here sulking. Such carrying on, he would mutter in disgust as he spied on the king from his window. Look at his crown bouncing up and down on the side of his head. Look at his beard flapping in the wind. Look at him laughing right out in broad daylight in front of the townsfolk. I must do something about this. And here he is, saying, I must do something about this. And one day, he did. Oh, man. He's a killjoy. He's a buzzkill, as they say. Lord Droon, old Lord Droon. There's too many Lord Droons in the world. Let's see what this guy's up to. One Wednesday, just before supper, when he thought the king was out, Lord Droon tiptoed down to the front hall. The guards at their posts were dozing. Without the smallest sound on the hard stone floor, Droon crept to the stilt closet, pulled back the ancient door, and reached in. It took only a second. He had the king's stilts. He unbuttoned the top of his long robe and shoved them down inside. Then he sneaked past the guards again and slipped through the door. And here he is. He's gone in, he's gotten the king's stilts, he stuck them in his suit to hide them, and he's sneaking past the guards to get out. He's got the king's stilts. Wonder what the king's gonna do. Down the steep, slanting stairway, Lord Droon marched with the stilts down to the furnace to burn them. This is the end of the king's foolish stilt walking, he mumbled to himself. Then suddenly, from around the bend of the stairs below, came the sound of happy whistling. The king. So, Droon's gone down. Looks like the king's coming up those stairs, but they're circular stairs. They go around, so you can't see each other till you get right up there. Lord Droon stopped still, almost frozen with fright. He tugged and pulled at his long flowing gown, struggling to cover the stilts. But he couldn't. The ends were too long and stuck out. So the stilts are coming out of his, and so I guess we'll show this to you now, or I'll show you this now. So there he is coming down the stairs, and you see the king way down there, and he's coming up. But they don't see each other yet. But it's obvious if they keep going the way they're going, that they're gonna see each other. And the king's gonna see that this dude has stolen his prized possession, his stilts. Droon, gasped Lord Droon. You'll be caught. He turned back and fled up the stairway. Nearer and nearer came the king, but Droon couldn't climb any faster. The stilts clattered, they banged and spanked against his knees. He looked up and saw a window. Stepping up to it quickly, he poked his head out. He looked down into an alley. A small boy was passing. It was Eric the page boy. Now, he should know Eric the page boy. They were together, just the three of them in the king's bathroom. when the king was taking a bath, and Eric was holding all the papers, and Lord Droon was handing the papers one at a time to the king for him to sign. Psst! You! Lord Droon hissed in a hoarse, nervous whisper. Eric looked up astonished. Yes, sir? He bowed politely. Take these stilts, commanded Lord Droon. Take them away. Bury them deep, where no one can ever find them. Bury them up by the sea, by the dike trees. Lord Droon flung the stilts from the window. The king's stilts? Bury them? Eric didn't know what to think. It will spoil all His Majesty's fun, he stammered. You're impudent, said Lord Droon harshly. I said bury those stilts. What's more, young man, don't you ever come back, or I'll have you locked up. I'll have no impudent boy around this castle. So impudent means he's a rebel, pushing back against authority. He's impudent. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. But I'm the king's own page boy, gasped Eric, hardly able to understand this dreadful command. You were the king's own page boy, snapped Lord Droon. He pulled in his head and slammed down the window. Poor Eric. Grandpa's losing his voice a little bit, so let me... Never before had Eric been so puzzled. Never in his life had he felt so sad. But there was nothing to do but obey the command. He picked up the stilts and walked straight toward the road that led to the sea. It was the hour that the townsfolk were all having supper. Nobody saw him dig the deep hole. Nobody saw him bury the stilts. At 5 the next afternoon, the halls of the castle echoed the king's mournful shouts. Droon! Droon! They're gone! They're gone! The king stood groping in the empty stilt closet, hopelessly searching for what wasn't there. And here's first Eric the page boy, Eric the Alpha B. It's a Monty Python reference. Ask your great Uncle Richard, he'll tell you. And there he is, he's burying the stilts in a hole down by the dike trees. Lord Droon chuckled to himself. He had expected this to happen and was ready with his lie. It was the townsfolk who did it, he said, peering into the stilt closet and pretending to be greatly shocked. I have seen them every day plotting behind the castle walls. A king, they say, should behave like a king and sit with pomp and dignity upon his royal throne. A king, they say, should never walk on stilts. It's too bad, Your Majesty, but you must try to do without them. So he's the king, they told him. He could just go like, no, I have another idea. Let's find who took him and killed him. King Bertram answered with a heartbroken sigh. Well, I'll try to do without them. But he couldn't. Day after day, he grew sadder and sadder. For long hours, he'd just sit idly drumming with his fingers on the arms of his throne. So he's going like, drum, 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 making noise like a drum. And here he is, sitting there, drumming with his fingers, There's Lord Droon up there, snickering. I make the king act like an adult. Lord Droon's kind of a turd, isn't he? I'm just saying. He couldn't keep his mind on his work. His commands to the patrol cats sounded feeble and faint. The cats seemed to know it and wouldn't obey. Day by day they grew lazier and lazier. Uncombed and unbrushed, they slept most of the day and grew fat. No one bothered to put their PC badges on them, for as chasers of lizards, they weren't worth a thing. And here they are. They're just chilling, being like cats. Big, fat, ugly cats. Day by day, the lizards grew bolder and bolder. They cackled and fluttered over the fig trees. They flew down and almost seemed to sneer at the lazy, sleeping cat. They sneered like, as they're going past them. And here they are. Dun, 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 dun. The ride of the Valkyries. The ride of the lizard. And they're sneering, especially this guy down here at the bottom. He's sneering, he's going, I hate you cats. I'm eating the dike trees. A lot of drama in this book, huh? The townsfolk began to feel frightened. Housewives couldn't keep their minds on their housework. They heard lizards flapping over the rooftops and poked their heads out for a look. And here they are, poking their heads out for a look. See the lizards up there? They're looking up like, oh no, there's lizards flying around. If the cats don't keep those lizards away from our dike trees, they asked one another, what will keep the ocean back out of our land? Bootmakers couldn't keep their minds on their boots. Goldsmiths couldn't keep their minds on their gold. Cart drivers couldn't keep their mind on where they were going. They'd stop their carts on the road and talk in low, excited whispers. Look at those lizards. Where are the cats? I'll tell you where the cats are. Everywhere they shouldn't be. And mostly fast asleep. And here's the lizards are up there at the retaining wall, at the dike, flying over it. These guys are going like, whoa, that's some scary stuff. Something must be wrong with the king. Yes, something's certainly wrong with the king. Only Eric, the page boy, knew what was wrong. Night after night, he tossed in his bed, thinking of the Stilts lying deep underground. Finally, one night, he could stand it no longer. Droon or no Droon, he would go to the king. At dawn the next day, he leapt out of bed and made straight for the castle. Breathless and panting, he raced through the royal gates and up the broad stairs. The king was strolling sadly on the terrace with Lord Droon and 2 guards. Eric rushed up. He must tell the king. Droon or no Droon, he was going to tell. But Lord Droon saw him coming and stepped quickly forward. Impudent boy, what are you doing here? Lord Droon confronting Eric. The king's back there, just all sad. He wants to walk around on his stilts. Stilts make you real tall. Before Eric could answer and push past him to the king, Lord Droon had grabbed him. He looked at Eric sharply, and suddenly the corners of his mouth turned up in a grin, a shrewd, evil grin. Your face, he said. What's wrong with your face? My face, said Eric. He rubbed his hand over his forehead. It was merely hot and moist from running. Nothing at all is wrong with my face. It's red, said Lord Droon with a sly look he always had when he lied. It's awfully, awfully red. So we know that Lord Droon's lying, but why is he saying, well, your face is red? Well, let's see what he's going to accuse Eric of. Measles, he shouted. Whoa, guards, take him away. Lock him up. So he's saying that this boy has the measles. I haven't measles any more than you have, shouted Eric. It's a trick, a nasty, Droonish trick. Let me talk to the king. But they dragged poor Eric, fighting and kicking, away from the king and down the castle stairs. 5 minutes later, Eric found himself locked up in an old, deserted house on the edge of town. From his second-story window, he could see the two guards, spears crossed, just below him, barring the door. Through the roof, he could hear the noises of the lizards. Their beaks were as hard as iron and scratched through the air. Eric shuddered. There must be a way to escape. Round and round the room he paced, thinking and thinking. He went to the window and looked down again. Then he whistled softly. He had an idea. So that's something that people do sometimes. They come up with an idea and they go, but not loud enough for these two dudes to go like, who's whistling up there? And the sign here says measles. Very quickly, Eric slipped off his belt. He pushed the end through the buckle and made a lasso. Then he leaned from the window and aimed for the spear points. He dropped the loop. It caught. He jerked the belt tight and tied a quick knot. Look, guards, look, shouted Eric as he jumped up on the windowsill. Your spears are tied together. If the guards had dropped their spears, they could have caught him in a second. But they didn't. They just yelled at each other and yanked and tugged, stupidly trying to pull the spears apart. By the time they finally had them untied, Eric had sprung to the tree outside his window and slid down the trunk and quietly escaped. Eric ran. So, there he is. Looking from this place, you can see the spears. The tips of the spears are tied together. The guards are all PO'd at each other. And Eric's heading out through the backyards and alleyways to escape the angry guards. The streets were deserted. No people at all. They were all at home, trembling, with their window shades pulled down. The air was full of the chittering and the chattering of lizards. They were cutting through the clouds like flying black knives, flying nearer, flying lower, down to earth to eat the dike tree roots, soon to let the sea pour in. Eric ran. He turned a corner. He stopped and stared with horror. Flowing gently toward him down the sloping alley came a little trickling stream. Water, he whispered hoarsely. He dipped in his finger. It tasted of salt. Sea water. One dike tree must already have been eaten clean through. Not a second to lose, gasped Eric. I must dig up the stilts. Up the hill to the dike trees where the king's stilts lay buried, right into the very thick of the lizards. They flapped and screeched about him. They hissed as he dug. Gritch, gritch, snarled the lizards. Gritch to you, snapped back Eric, furiously pelting them with fistfuls of mud. And here he is. He's doing that. The lizards are all around him. And he's like hurling mud up there at them. The harder they fought him, the faster he dug. His fingers touched the stilts at last. He pulled them from the ground. Stilts bouncing on his shoulder. Eric ran. The road to the castle took him back through the town. The streets were still deserted. Close by the door of an old tailor shop, Eric stopped for an instant to rest. The stilts had begun to hurt his shoulder. Those two stupid guards, he thought. I wonder where they are. He found out all too soon. From around the corner at his very elbow suddenly bellowed the angry voice of old Lord Droon. You, guards. Guards indeed, to let a little pipsqueak of a boy tie up your spears. Dunderheads, search every street. Search every house. So now Eric can't go someplace to hide because they're searching everywhere. Eric heard the clatter of their heavy hobnail boots. No time to run. No time to hide. Wait, there's clothes in the tailor shop. Eric ducked inside, so he was at a tailor shop, and it's a place in the old days where they made clothes and also mended clothes and adjusted the sizes of clothes. An instant later, Lord Droon and the guards appeared around the corner. Search that tailor shop first, commanded Lord Droon. And we know that the boy has gone in there. But just as he said this, from out of the shop strode a strange, tall man. There was something very odd about the hang of his robe. His hat was pulled down far over his eyes. His eyes, muttered Droon. Have I seen them before? He stepped in front of the tall man, blocking his path. The tall man's mouth went suddenly dry. Are you, he stammered hoarsely, are you, by any chance, seeking a small boy with no belt? Which way, shouted the guards. Which way did he go? That way, said Eric, and he nodded toward the sea. So Eric is the one that everybody's chasing. But now they don't know that Eric looks like this. So they think he's a little bit older than he is. With a clatter of hobnails, the two guards were off, Lord Droon sputtering and scolding along behind them. And here he is. Kind of looks like my Aunt Elsie did back in the day. Definitely rocking the Aunt Elsie look. Lord Droon with the two stupid guards. And can see if you look real close at the boy, at the head of this guy, it's the boy. It's that boy, Eric. You can see. No time to shrink down to a boy again, thought Eric. I'll have to stay a tall man. So now they think he's tall. Onto the castle Eric raced in his disguise, over fences and thickets, through orchards and fields of corn. Everywhere he saw patrol cats, useless and limp, fast asleep on haystacks, dozing in the trees. Then suddenly, just ahead, he saw the king. He was sitting on a little pile of stones, just outside the gate. His robe wasn't pressed. His crown wasn't shined, and he had deep, sad circles under his eyes. Your Majesty, shouted Eric as he clattered up behind him. The king paid no attention. And here's the scene up to now. So you see the king sitting over there and Eric's flying at him because Eric has those stilts. And that's how he became a tall guy. He's just using the king's stilts. They're underneath the outfit that he had gotten at the tailor shop. The king paid no attention. Eric leaned down and shouted right into his ear. Very slowly, the king turned his head. Well, sighed King Bertram, and who may you be? I'm Eric, cried Eric. He let the robe that was covering him drop to the ground. The king's own red stilts flashed bright in the sun. Down from the stilts leapt Eric, the page boy. Up onto the stilts sprang Bertram. So here's Eric going like, hey, it's me, King. It's your page boy, Eric. It's your boy. Because he was fooled too. Up onto the stilts sprang Bertram the king. He drew a great kingly breath, the first one in weeks. His head shot up high, his chest broad and wide. Bertram of Ben was sturdy, straight, and strong again, and every inch a king. Patrol cats! It was the loudest command ever shouted in Ben. The king's voice seemed to roll up from deep in his boots. It echoed down the valleys. It rumbled through the hills. From wherever they had wandered, the cats heard the call. They fell in line. They fell in step. They marched ahead 1,000 strong. So both shifts, night shift and day shift, they're both reporting for duty. We call that drop back in the Philadelphia Police Department. From wherever they had wandered, the cats heard the call. Up the hill to the dike trees, they followed Eric and the king. Day cats to the left flank, night cats to the right. Charge, the king shouted. 100,000 lizards. Wow, they're 100 to 1. There's 100,000 lizards and 1,000 cats. This is quite a battle royale here. 100,000 lizards stopped their pecking and sprang to meet the charge. The dike trees shook as the cats roared their war cry. The sea's surface swirled into wild, raging whirlpools. The noise was heard in Samba Land, 500 miles away. The fur flew fast, but the feathers flew faster. It took only 10 minutes. The kingdom was saved. And here's what it looks like, the battle. It's a lot going on in that battle. But the cats are winning, and they're beating the birds. The townsfolk stopped trembling indoors behind their window shades. They rushed out from their houses and filled the air with cheers. The king punished Droon in a most fitting way. He sent him to live by himself with a guard of patrol cats in that old deserted house with the sign that said measles. And he made him eat nizzards 3 times every day. Stewed nizzards for breakfast, cold nizzards for lunch, fried nizzards for supper, and every other Thursday they served him nizzard hash. And here's Droon. Old Droon doesn't like fun. It's a buzzkill Droon. He's got the cats guarding him. There's the sign that says measles. So he's in there and he's eating those scraggly birds. And you see him, he's getting ready to eat one of those birds. Ew. Nasty. Your grandmother would go, that's nasty. I know there's one more page here. Where is it? It's been cold here, so my hands are dried out. But Eric, his page boy, the king gave a fine and just reward. He ordered the royal carpenter to make another pair of stilts. Tall stilts, red and flashing, exactly like his own. From then on, every day at 5, they always raced on stilts together. And when they played, they really played. And when they worked, they really worked. And the cats kept the nizzards away from the dike trees. And the dike trees kept the water back out of the land. And that's it. You see Eric and the king on their stilts, frolicking in the background, and the cats are like, hey, this is cool. And the lizards were conquered. Peace out.